Sufficiency is a slightly different take on life. I first heard this term when I listened to a talk given by a Thai speaker, a woman called Davisi Buntam. I don't know whether you guys know. She lectures at NUS, and she came to Kuching and she talked about sufficiency. She talked about how there's a certain frugality and a certain mindfulness that the Thais, it's the way they lead their lives. You know, they use what they need. They leave the rest for other people, for another day. So it's something that has sort of appealed to me, lah. So you start with your family. You know, you tell them about, you know, we have one house, we've got one car, we make our own furniture, we compost, we try to grow our own food, we recycle, we feed people we like, we adopt our pets from the animal shelter. But how does this transfer itself to work? It's a bit harder when you're trying to convince someone to pay money and trying to make them understand this notion of sufficiency. What does it mean? I've got money. Why can't I pay for it? But when it succeeds, it's also more rewarding because and impactful because you can reach out to a bigger field. Because our work is physical. It's there for people to see. And the test of the pudding is to actually experience it by visiting the building or by going up to touch the work itself. So then our work becomes an education for ourselves, for our colleagues, and also for our clients. And that's something that perhaps I can just share a little bit in this short time about why is this important. It's important because we talk about green architecture, we talk about why the environment is important. So it's our little way of lessening our impact on the environment. Okay, so let's see whether I can convince you guys so that by the end of the evening, maybe we can talk a bit about sufficiency in our lives and maybe in our work. So usually it starts at the site. What is there already? Maybe it's an existing building, maybe it's a shed, maybe it's a tree. There's nothing that hurts me most being from Kuching. When I go to an old suburb of Kuching, Lintang, Kenyalang, and I see that someone has bought a house, and the next month they've torn it down. And I always accuse people that these people are not from Kuching, that's why they don't understand, that's why they tear it down. But that's not necessarily true, I know, I'm just being bitter and twisted. So when there is something even very small like a tree on the site, we want to keep it. You know, it's something that our clients come and say, it's okay, you can cut down the tree, never mind, because ada semut lah, you know, but say it's okay, because the tree was there first. You say, but it's easier to start with a clean slate. But then we say, but sometimes it's better, the design is better with constraint. Unlimited budgets do not necessarily create good architecture, also we think lah. But we designed the house around the tree, and in doing so, we created these two slender blocks, you know, one for the guests and the parents, and the other one for the family and the kids. This is a Malay family, so the hierarchy of spaces is especially important to them. So, but the beauty of this L-shaped plan is that the rooms are the house, the floor plans, it's one room wide, you know. So ventilation is very easy. Getting natural sunlight is very easy. And then also you've got that instant landscape, you know, that tree. Because that tree would have taken 5 years to grow, but we've got it instantly. And we feel that it's a nice reward. It's something that's visible from many parts of the house, and it's like this reassuring presence that you can sense, you know, throughout the house. Something that sort of maybe even watches over them. And the other nice thing too is that because you do an L-shaped plan, you leave a lot of the green space for the kids to play in. Because we know that, you know, in the tropics, shade is everything, especially if it is natural and not man-made. Okay? So, salvage. It's a bit different from recycling. Recycling is something that you do. We all do recycling. So when you do it with buildings, what do you call it? You know, you call it conservation, preservation. Personally, I like adaptive reuse. Adaptive reuse means that all things get a lease of new life. So a few years ago, we were very fortunate. We got to do this big club extension in Leisure Farm. We spent 2 years working on it. But I can't tell you anything about it other than this slide because it didn't get built. But instead, we got asked to do this renovation of a guardhouse. Guardhouse, okay, not clubhouse. So the clubhouse was like, 20 million. The clubhouse was, I think, 20,000. But we did it. So again, the client says, look, pull the building down. Okay, it looks a bit clumsy, it's a bit bulky, and it's from the 80s. We don't like it. But then, when people tell us to do stuff, especially when they say, oh, you can pull it down, say, no, we don't want to pull it down. Because, not just to be stubborn, because we think that, someone obviously spent time designing it. Okay? Someone spent money, someone paid for it, and then someone took the care to build it. Okay? So at that point in time in the 80s, someone was very proud of it, like how my mother's proud of me. So someone's very proud of it, they took pictures of it. And it seemed a pity to waste it, so we thought we're going to work around it somehow. So we removed some of the clumsy parts, the roof, the sticky out bits, we removed that. And we kept the frame. Because if you look at a person, you look at a woman, if she's good looking, if she's got good bone structure, she will look good in a pair of jeans and a white t-shirt, correct? Good. Hands up. Well done, okay. Agreed. Okay, good. I'm starting to convince you guys. I'm glad. And in doing so, you also reduce the need to do additional foundations because the frame is already there. So you cut short your time, you cut short your cost, which is a really stupid thing to do because we get paid our fees based on total construction cost. So in fact, we are helping our clients reduce our fees. So which means that we usually work a lot harder for a lot less fees. But there are benefits, so you can ask me what the benefits are during Q&A. Okay? You get free popcorn. So what we did was we clad the building in a simple brick lace. Because brick is cheap, you just need the skill to lay it the way we wanted it to behave. We sort of adjust the permeability of the brickwork depending on what was happening behind that particular screen. Okay, so we adjust openings according to the needs. It's a new building, but it's got links with the past. And luck of the dumb, we wanted to submit the clubhouse for publication, but it never got built. So we submitted this in protest, and then we want a mention. So it's quite nice, you get your rewards. So, okay, sometimes this idea of sufficiency, you need your clients to buy into the idea. In this particular case, a very simple exercise. You can see at the top of the screen this ugly driveway. We convince our clients to walk more. Don't park the car near the house, park the car at the gate. And then you have this walkway into the house, and you give the green back to the garden. So you remove, and then you gain through the removal. Okay, this is another one where client also told us, you can pull down the buildings. This is in Bintulu. They really hated the Minangkabau roof. They've been working there for 20 years. They didn't like it. Personally, I didn't like it either. I think it's a very strange architectural prototype for a Petronas subsidiary. They wanted a new look, so they wanted us to get rid of everything, clean slate. But then, the rebellion again. We thought we'll keep some of the buildings so that there is this constraint that you put on yourself to retain some of the existing structures to see whether they can be adapted for the new use. So we kept 2 of the blocks. You can see them here. We just took away the roof and basically did it in such a way that they blended in with the new architecture. Even the old buildings leave their mark. You see, they're here. We kept the footprint, and we planted trees so that there is this memory of what was there before. It's just something that sort of interested us to do, to retain the past, to prolong the site's personal history. So when you do these things enough times, your ideas sort of influence others. So the contractor start getting this idea of recycling, reusing, adaptive reuse. So they said, there's a lot of pipes that they throw away from the plant. These are stainless steel pipes that they refurbish every month. What can we do with them? They pose, this is the contractor posing the question. So when the opportunity came up for us to design something for the wall, we thought, why don't we just put this together as a wall mural? So this is the contractor. His name is Hii Min. Hii Min is a welder, and he for a day, I was the welder, he was the designer. So we got onto the scaffold and we had a sketch, and we created this scribbly thing, using all the recycled pipes. There were no drawings, so that's why I had to climb up onto the scaffold to help him. And the end product, it looks quite nice, it looks like a piece of art, like that, together with all the furniture in the executive lounge. People ask me what the sculpture means many times. I've not been able to give them a convincing answer. It depends on who's asking, is it worshipping hands? If the imam asks, is it worshipping hands? Yes. If the politician asks, is it the map of Sarawak? Yes. But actually, I don't know what it is. So the other thing, the other device, the other notion that we use to promote and prolong this idea of sufficiency in the office is this idea of served and servant spaces. It's something that is propagated by people, the modernist architects like Louis Kahn, who argues that, buildings have got spaces that serve and spaces that are served. Spaces that are served, for example, in this house would be all your living spaces, your living rooms, your dining rooms, your bedrooms. And then the servant spaces are the service spaces, the spaces that work very hard to support the function of the house. Your toilets, your corridors, your stairs. So in this particular house, as you can see, right, the core or the servant spaces is concentrated in the middle of the house. So it's like a core house, very much like a Malay core house where everything spills from it. So much so that in this house, there are hardly any walls. So one space sort of flows into another space. And because of this, you end up having less construction costs because there are hardly any walls. There's also less operation costs because the space is light and airy. It doesn't need for you to turn on the lights during the day, and there's less aircon load as well. For the students out there, right, people like Frank Lloyd Wright and people like Miss, they call this organic or plastic space. Organic, not in the sense that the form is like bubble gum. It means that organic space, meaning that it flows from one to the other. It's not contained within the shape of a room. Yeah, that's why they call it plastic space. And then really prolonging and extending the idea of sufficiency. If you look at the roof, the eaves do not have a ceiling. They do not have insulation because it's not required. I only need it there to keep the rain out and to provide a bit of shade. So that's our idea of sufficiency. Now, how does this notion of serve and servant spaces help with sufficiency? It means that it enables you to prioritize where you should spend your money. If you've got a limited budget, then I would want to spend money on the served spaces and maybe less money on the servant spaces. Not to be cheap, but it's to actually do it in such a way that these spaces work very hard, they last for a long time, they don't break down, and they just serve you. So in this house, what we've done is that we've done the same thing. The corridors, they are the servant spaces, and they support the bedrooms upstairs. And even the tall spaces, they do the same thing. They serve. Again, with the notion of sufficiency, what we've done here is that it doesn't just happen with finishes and materials. It also works with structure. Okay, like for example here, what we did was we turned up all the beams. We turned up all the floor beams on the ground floor. So and we hid them in the partitions of the rooms upstairs. So that then you have a very tall ceiling space, which is actually the underside of the slab. So you minus the need for a ceiling. What we did here was just applied a bit of spray tags and white paint, and you've got the underside of the slab, which is actually structure, as an architectural finish or an architectural element. So not only do you lessen the cost of the construction by omitting the ceiling construction, you also reduce the overall floor-to-floor heights. So that you can then have money to spend on a swimming pool, and this is the where the upturned beams are. Yeah, so we turn them up; they are hidden between the walls of the room, so that we can spend money inside to do funky things with a plaster ceiling. So that it's again a cheap material, but just with a little bit of design input to stretch your design thinking into something that enhances the experience of the house. We believe that good design principles are ones that has got very broad application. So this idea of served and servant spaces, we use it for our commercial projects as well. This is a temporary office building in Johor, very near Iskandar, where you have been. It's actually a site office for a construction company. Again, you can see very clearly how we've distinguished the served and servant spaces. The served spaces are the office, and the servant spaces are the corridors and the toilets. And the building is also done in such a way that the servant spaces and the served spaces, they've got quite distinct material selection as well. Okay. The street, that we call it the service core, it's protected by a permeable steel wall so that it allows light to come through so that the trees along that street will grow. And then we also prolong the journey from the served spaces to the toilets. They go through these bridges to go to the toilet, just to prolong the trip to the toilet so they don't have to get back to work so quickly. So, okay, to conclude, these are things that we ask ourselves at work. Whether we can make our designs work a bit harder, whether we can make do with cheaper material, whether we can make do with local materials, whether we can make, this is the special one that I like, whether we can make one building element do the work of several. Can this thing do two things, For example, cheap materials. Can I use cement render for a building facade? This is just cement render with a sealant. And it's completed. It's been completed for a year. It's a house in Penang. Can we use the common brick as a decorative screen? Can we walk onto the roof and use it as a lookout? Can your roof be a water collecting device? Can your ground beams be can it be constructed as a pond? Can your security grill be a ledge for laundry powder and also support the aircon? Can artwork be signage? Or can signage be artwork? Can your piles be columns for the carport? These are things that we've done. We've experimented with some fear, but it succeeds. It's been standing for the last 3-4 years, so I think we are safe. Can the screen for the stairs be also the support and also be the room, the wall for the spare bedroom? You can see the spare bedroom behind. So this screen does several jobs. Oops. This is a favorite of mine. To just put the important materials where it needs to do the work. Can we build less and give back to nature? Can the parts that touches the wheel be concrete and the rest be grass? I think it can. So that sort of, and we take the idea a little bit further. Can only the parts that come into contact with the human body be nice and warm and expensive, whereas the rest of it is just structure, steel, coal, maybe cheaper? So same thing applies for this corridor, which is also a ramp for that house. Can we just use cement screed? Why do we use tiles? Tiles are expensive. Can we just draw lines on the screed to give it texture? This is something that we did in our old office at DNS. I think Suchi did it for a wall in Hilda's house. I'm copying it for on the floor. But it's just all cement screed with powder and with a little bit of light and magic. Can you let the leaves leave their mark, Use leaves instead of using tiles. It's cheap. Can you use shadows? They're even cheaper and they change during the day. They don't cost anything, except for the screen. So, okay, last 3 slides. What do you guys take away from this lecture? The young ones especially, Can you start by building something for yourself? This is something that we built in our illegal extension. Everything here is salvaged. It's not necessarily recycled because I've kept it for a long time. You need to have willing hands, or slaves or children. These doors are from a renovation that Arlene did. It's not even my renovation. She gave me I took the windows, and then they become walls, And then before you know it, you have a kitchen that you can cook for one, or maybe you can cook for many. Because I think one of the things about, home-cooked meals are also a form of sufficiency, aren't they? The imperfections and the variety in a potluck meal is, I think, its most charming attribute. So if that is too challenging, maybe the young ones can start by making a bench. Okay, so this is what some of the young ones in my office have started to do. They come to my house, they use up my recycled timber to make a bench for their mother and things like that. Sometimes their mother reject it, and then they take it to the office. And, by transforming it with their own hands, right, it is so precious to them. You see, he's giving up his seat. He's sitting on his own creation rather than to sit on that nice Bristol chair next to him. So to conclude, right, I urge you guys to try it because it's very addictive. Thank you.